So we have Jeremy Bertarioni over here, player 1, and Robert Gress is player 2, both here with 28 points going here into round 5. And it looks like Jeremy is on the play.
Yes, Jeremy's on the play and also playing Ruby Amethyst. Something to note about
Ruby Amethyst gegen Emerald Steel.
That should mean that both of these players
Klassisches
are
Matchup, ne?
so far in the rounds.
Wer gewinnt denn da?
Going 2-0, so both players certainly knowing what they're doing.
Ach, da sind doch noch 4-0er. Jetzt kriegen wir sie erst zu sehen.
How this game plays out. And we see Robert inking Ursula Deceiver to play a Diablo. He'll get a good look at Jeremy's hand. I saw a couple of brawls in there.
The bounce package.
Some of the bounce package. Looking for what he needs to play, or what Robert needs to play around in these next couple of
Interessant,
turns.
was da das Stärkere ist.
Yeah, so this, I feel like this matchup is
Ruby Amethyst.
pretty close between Ruby Amethyst and Emerald Steel, and really it's like what happens in the first few turns.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head with that one, Rebecca. A lot of times it comes down to
Aber Jeremy,
who just gets a really good
in Go.
Robert misses a Bucky, for instance, and misses some of the discard, then Ruby Amethyst doesn't have to worry too much about
Dahingegen ist direkt Turn 2 Diablo und ist in die Hidden Cove reingemoved.
One-drop or a two-drop and then pass 2 turns. But of course, we do see Robert coming out with a very strong Turn 2.
Jetzt kann nicht mal brawlen.
This Diablo by discarding an action card and playing the Hidden Cove to move the Diablo there.
Dann wahrscheinlich doch Robert gewinnt dieses Spiel.
Hand that we saw before no longer can banish the Diablo, since the Diablo has 3 strength and 3 willpower.
Yes,
aber mal gucken, vielleicht auch doch nicht.
That is the enchanted
Weil wenn Robert jetzt zu viel zieht,
which is just fantastic. We talked last game.
Dann kann sie so am Ende das Hidden Cove abarbeiten.
Cards, how incredible they are, and really fun always to see players bringing those enchanted cards down.
And it looks like there's more than one. I think I saw another enchanted card in Robert's hand.
I think you're right. Look at that, another enchanted Diablo just waiting
Donald Duck finde ich auch gar nicht schlecht.
In the wings. Grab your sunglasses, folks.
Yes.
It's going to be a blinding match.
Very shiny.
We do see a Bucky being played after that.
Denn damit kann man, selbst wenn die gegnerische Hand schon leer ist, trotzdem in seinem Turn noch so Value machen, in Anführungszeichen. Der Gegner hat ja dann wieder eine und dann wirft man die damit wieder ab. Mit seinem Bucky. Finde ich eigentlich ganz nice, diesen Donald. Aber die Frage ist natürlich, was man dafür cuttet, ne?
Every time Robert draws a card, the Sisu gets bigger.
Gets strength, yes. It's very, very circular. That's very interesting. And Sisu, of course, is the dragon from Riot and the Last Dragon. And one of the things I was thinking about is, you know, this Sisu and even the other legendary Sisu that we'll sometimes
Aber jetzt hat er 5 Fun-Karten, jetzt kann er super in den Hidden Cove hineinsammeln. Das hätte man sich vielleicht sparen sollen. Wenn er jetzt einfach nicht gezogen hätte, wäre es nicht gegangen. Aber gut, nächste Runde wäre dann das Ding abgearbeitet gewesen. Aber so schon jetzt sofort. Nicht so schlecht gemacht. Wenn jetzt nicht noch, ja, eigentlich selbst wenn jetzt noch in den Kopf kommt. Jeremy kann dann nächste Runde finally den Diablo brawlen.
We have the Maleficent Dragon that I can think of, but there's so many Sisus and so many of them see play, you know.
Yeah. We unfortunately didn't see the Flynn come down on Jeremy's side, and I know that that combo, the Flynn Sisu, is one of the really strong openings that a Ruby Amethyst player wants to see. But
especially on the play, Jeremy being able to go first, being able to play the Flynn Rider and then the Sisu and then the Queen's Castle after that, or a Rabbit would have been super strong. Oh, we see another.
Oh, nice. Robin, Shift Robin sofort.
There's a Enchanted Ursula in the Inkwell, and then.
Oh my goodness.
Robert is all blinged out with his.
Wow, Robert the Pimp.
I love it, and that
Robin
von
Alex
coming down. That's gonna be, yeah, really strong for him.
Yeah, especially this early in the game. Robin Hood having 3 strength and 6 willpower. It has the ability to banish characters in a challenge, and then when it banishes them in the challenge.
Wow, let the Storm Rage on. Ein Song für 3, der 2 Schaden macht und eine Karte zieht. Hashtag Brandon.
Cards in Lorcana can only do one of a couple things. They can either challenge for turn, or sing, or quest. And of course, questing, gaining you lore to help you win the game. So Robin Hood able to do both of those in
Peter Pan, Shadowfinder ist es, ne? Der rusht jetzt erstmal rein in den Diablo.
Then he gets to
draw
a card. So until we get up to about 6 innings,
stark.
Medusas, this
Kann er jetzt hinten für 3.
Sit there and dare Jeremy to
erkunden für 3, würde ich wahrscheinlich auch machen.
So that Robin Hood
Yes.
Wobei er hat vielleicht Angst, er hat Angst, beide Charakter, einen von beiden Charakteren zu verlieren. Interessant.
Specifically for the Emerald Steel matchup. Peter Pan Shadowfinder is an uninkable
bleibt lieber zu
3
Hause mit Sisu.
with Evasive and Rush. And so
Weil er fett Bock hat, aber auch nächste Runde. Also mit Merlin kann ich verstehen. Mit Sisu hätte ich vielleicht erkundet. Aha, Be Prepared ist abgeworfen, aber nicht so schlimm, weil die beiden Madame Mim werden in Kombination mit dem Merlin natürlich ordentlichen Kartenvorteil noch machen können. Ich vermute, das werden wir auch gleich sehen. Diablo, da ist noch ein Diablo? Boah, die ist enchanted. Holy crap.
Which, of course, Robert wants to have Diablo exerted because that's how you get the card.
Daran sieht man es. Die ersten 3 Runden haben wir so keine gesehen, aber jetzt bei so 4-0, 3-0-1, da haben die Leute dann die Enchanteds. Da sieht man, die sind die Good Player.
They really want to be drawing cards for the first couple turns of the game. We haven't really seen that. I think Rabbit's basically the only thing that we've seen played to draw extra cards. Fortunately, the Bucky, it's been doing a little bit of work. There's been, for the past couple turns, Floodborn's been played, getting rid of cards from Jeremy's hand. But luckily, Jeremy's been able to find at least 2 rabbits, drawing a couple cards off of that. We're going to see this rabbit being bounced.
Vielleicht sollte man mal auf seine Deckliste so draufschreiben müssen, wie viele Enchanteds man spielt und dann immer die mit den meisten kriegen das Feature-Match.
Robin Hood, if Jeremy wants to.
And I do see that Jeremy has a Be Prepared in his hand, which he's actually had for the last couple turns, and it's just kind of sitting there.
Yeah, it's kind of a scary thing for Jeremy to even have this Be Prepared in your hand. It's definitely a card that you want to see as you get closer to 7 ink, but knowing that you're playing against Emerald Steel, Robert likely knows that Be Prepared is one of Jeremy's best outs to Diablo and to Bucky. So if Robert has the ability to play an Ursula Deceiver when Jeremy has 6 ink, knowing he's going to go to 7 ink the next turn, then Robert can potentially force Jeremy to discard that Be Prepared and mess up his entire game plan, leaving Bucky on board and the Diablos to continue to force Jeremy to discard cards. And then
Jeremy hat sogar noch einen Be Prepared nachgezogen. Ja.
Yeah, so a card like that, the Ursula Deceiver,
wenn das jetzt in 2 Runden nicht abhanden kommt, so nach dem ersten Be Prepared ist meistens nicht mehr viel los mit
Emerald Steel. You don't necessarily always want to play it on curve. Like sometimes you do want to hold it back and play it at the right time.
Yeah, sometimes it's best to not play your Ursula Deceiver on turn 2. It's not a terribly statted character in that it has a lot of willpower, so it won't always be banished immediately. But it's a great way to completely disrupt your opponent's game plan, especially when you know that one of their outs to your deck is a song card like Be Prepared. We know that Jeremy's game plan for this matchup is essentially to get to 7 ink as fast as you can so that you can play those Be Prepareds. So if you're able to force discard one of those Be Prepareds, you already see another one that had been discarded earlier that's in Jeremy's discard right now. Jeremy can only play 4 of them.
Macht Madame Medusa auf das Beast.
If 2 go into the discard, that means that Jeremy's only got 2 left in the deck. He's less likely to find the others. Robert can play a bit more aggressively with his characters, go a little bit wider, and try to end the game before Jeremy can come back.
Okay.
Yeah. And we did see a few different things that happened there. So Jeremy had to ink a goat. Unfortunately, that was the only full card that he had in his hand. But he played the Madame Medusa to banish Beast, which, you know, Beast is such a strong card, but Medusa just takes care of it in a snap.
Yes, the face that you see on Beast Tragic Hero is how I feel when Madame Medusa gets played on my Beast Tragic Hero.
It's tragic.
Because Beast is a very powerful card.
And there's another
one. He just comes right back. Can't siege the castle that fast.
Yes.
So Beast Tragic Hero will draw you a card at the beginning of your turn if he's not damaged. If he is damaged, then he gets an extra 4 strength until this, just for your turn.
Yeah, and that was really unfortunate for Jeremy because that second Beast that just came down, because it's a Floodborn and he still has that Bucky out, forced Jeremy to discard the last card in his hand, which was his Be Prepared.
Yeah, which was that Be Prepared. So that means there's 2 Be Prepareds down from Jeremy's deck, and
TCG auf die Hand tätowiert
either. So
crazy.
He's top decking right now. Has to consider if you play the card that you draw, or if you ink the card that you
TCG Airplane,
so that if you do draw it, Be Prepared later in the game, you can actually play it. We do see the Madame Medusa challenge to banish the Robin Hood, which Robert should be able to draw a card off of that. And we see Queen's Castle come down. And Jeremy's going to move both
das kann jetzt nicht mal weggefahren werden.
So that if those characters are still at the Queen's
Die Madame Medusa ist natürlich wahrscheinlich gleich abgetauscht von der Ursula.
Draw an extra 2 cards.
Yeah, and as we've seen in other matches,
das Beast könnte dann schon mal reinsammeln in das Castle. Aber wenn jetzt der Queeky kommt,
Robert is thinking,
der wäre natürlich mal wieder super
take
jetzt.
care of this Queen's Castle? What do you think he's looking for? for.
Yeah, I mean, this would be huge if the Queen's Castle stays and Jeremy's able to draw a couple extra cards. Right now, Robert only has, I believe, 5 strength on board, with the Queen's Castle only having 7 willpower. So Robert needs to find something to banish the Queen's Castle. I don't think there's any rush characters.
Hidden Cove, damit kann jetzt
he could rush into this Queen's Castle.
das Castle, ja klar, macht auch Hidden Cove, tut da Bucky und Beast rein.
Something like a Baboom would even do
Achso, das reicht nicht,
challenge
ne?
all of your characters into the Queen's Castle this turn. There's also
Also doch, das reicht dann, aber dann kann nicht auch noch die Madame Medusa wegmachen.
That can banish locations just outright. We don't typically see those cards being played in Emerald
Ach, traurig, er hat dann so 8, aber er muss halt einen overkillen auf das Queen's Castle und es geht sich nicht aus.
Yeah, he has a Robin Hood, Hidden Cove. I think I saw Prince John in there.
Der Hidden Cove answered das doch schon.
I'm not sure that he has anything right now
Let's
that
go,
would
Brandon.
take care of that Queen's Castle very quickly.
And if we can't take care of the Queen's Castle, we might as well banish one of the characters that are there. The Madame Medusa is exerted with 3 damage on her, which means that the Ursula Deceiver, I think, is the most likely thing to challenge into the Medusa and have it banished, unless Robert wants to challenge with a Bucky and then play another Bucky if he has one. But at least you can get the Madame Medusa off there so that Jeremy will only draw 1 card for the next turn for the fox that is at that location.
Oder halt jetzt rein für 8.
Hidden Cove coming out, he is giving all of his characters a boost there. He did pay 3 ink to move all 3 characters to the Hidden Cove, and they're all 3 going into the Queen's Castle.
Yeah, I completely missed the Hidden Cove line of being able to play Hidden Cove, giving all of your characters extra strength so that now you do have 7 willpower to challenge into the Queen's Castle. This is how strong we talked in the last match, I believe, of how strong Hidden Cove can be because of these surprise plays where your opponent thinks, okay, they don't have enough strength on board to challenge into this, and then you say, actually. I do, after playing the Hidden Cove. So a great representation there of that. Making sure that Jeremy doesn't draw any extra cards for the turn and having a possibility of coming back into this game.
Yes. And we see him taking care of
das Beast.
Not the Hidden Cove. Yeah. He was thinking about it. He was going to go into Hidden Cove, but instead chose to give Madame Medusa a boost with the Merlin Crab and take out the Beast.
Dieser Crab macht echt immer so ordentlich einen Tempovorteil.
Merlin cards, whenever Merlin Crab enters and leaves play, you can give one of your characters Challenger +3. So exactly what he did with Madame Medusa.
Nein, du musst einem Character Challenger +3 geben, im Zweifelsfall auch dem vom Gegner. Brandon. Sei doch bitte wenigstens nicht so dumm, die Karten vorzulesen.
Jeremy's now at 5 lore and
du kannst
Robert
sonst
is
schon
at
nix.
9. And we see that Flynn coming down. Ooh, that's big.
Yeah, this is really big. Right now, Jeremy only has the card that he draws for turn in hand, and Flynn Rider,
hat auch noch eine.
has 4 lore. Loses a lore for every card that is in Jeremy's hand. So while Jeremy has no cards in hand, Flynn Rider's going to quest for 4. You see Jeremy drew a Maui, immediately plays
das
the
sieht
Maui
allerdings doch super für Robert aus.
And now Flynn Rider can quest
Zumal
for 4
Jeremy auch nur so 6 Ink hat.
So in Robert's hand, he has a Prince John, and I didn't see what the other card is that he has.
Da wird Be Prepared von oben nicht viel nutzen. +2 sind, glaube ich, schon weg.
It's another shiny
das
card.
Das Game geht am Ende doch an Robert.
An enchanted something.
Hard for me to see as well.
Maybe Ursula?
Yes, Ursula and a Prince John.
Oh, they're both coming down.
Robert's going all
Prince
out
John sogar.
right now, playing his cards
Haben
out
wir ja
of
in
his
Runde
hand.
1 auch schon gesehen, von diesem Chicago Champion.
Getting pretty close to 20 lore when you consider all of the lore.
Eine interessante
that
Karte,
is on
die
the side of his board right now, jumping all the way up
die Leute früher gerne gespielt haben.
Jeremy doesn't have the ability to play something like people.
Aber die dann eigentlich so mit Set 4 eigentlich doch eher
so Robert knows he can fairly safely play all of these characters
aus dem Deck.
out. It's going to force Jeremy to have an answer for all of them.
Man so gute Optionen hatte für 3.
He does have
Diablo
friends
legen,
on the other side
Ursula
in
legen,
hand, so
Robin Hood reinschiften. Da gibt es nicht mehr so viel Platz für Prince John.
Needs an inkable card
Aber ist natürlich
and
nicht
to be
schlecht, Prince
prepared.
John.
Let's see if he finds it. We find the Be Prepared.
Oh,
er hat
den
den
wieder
gefunden.
card?
It is Maleficent.
Oh my goodness.
Holy crap.
And
he's gonna quest with the crab.
Maleficent, and we see Be Prepared.
Wow. he finds the out of exactly inkable card and Be Prepared. Managed to find it, banishing Robert's entire board, including his own. And now, I mean, he can potentially come back if he continues to find answers to these
Aber Robert hat
cards
schon
Robert's
15
playing.
Lore.
Robert,
Ich glaube,
of course,
das
still
schafft er
had
doch
a
noch.
pretty healthy hand, so it's going to come back immediately, play a couple characters. So it's going to be a climb if Jeremy wants to come back, but that's exactly what he needed.
It is. Yeah, he needed it probably sooner than he found it, but it did help him live to see another turn. And the Chernobox Followers was not the card that you wanted to see at this point in the game.
No, not the card you want to see at all. It'll help Jeremy dig a little deeper, except it's going to get removed by Strength of a Raging Fire.
Yeah,
so Jeremy needs like another Be Prepared, I think, and doesn't find it.
Doesn't find it. The win goes to Robert. So Emerald Steel, really, those Buckies and everything, Diablo, those shiny Diablos. The flock of birds doing their job.
The flock of birds. And I think, I mean, we really saw Bucky shine there, no pun intended, of being like dwindling Jeremy down to almost no cards in hand. He was holding on to that Be Prepared for so long and really needed to play that when he had it. And Robert was just able to find that Floodborn character. I think it was a Diablo or a Beast that he could play and force them to discard that Be Prepared that they really needed.
They really needed. And he did find it later, but it was too late.
A little too late.
Little too late. So let's see if we can hold on to his cards in this second game and pull out a win, or if Emerald Steel is just going to run away with it again.
All right.
So this matchup does seem like it kind of tips in favor to Emerald Steel, especially if they can get those Diablos and Buckies. Even without Bucky, though, I feel like Emerald Steel is really favored in this matchup.
It's kind of tough because the Ruby Amethyst player
was sehen wir
essentially
denn da?
has to play cards that draw cards for the first 6 or 7 turns of the game.
Ist
Just
eine
because of
relativ
how
gute
threatening
Hand.
a card like Bucky is. Even if your opponent has Diablo, you need a couple pieces, right? If they play the Floodborn Diablo, you really need a Brawl to get rid of that Diablo because you are trying to play cards that draw you cards throughout the game. And
Ich finde ja schade, dass sie die Hand nicht auch einfach liegen lassen. So mache ich es
your
immer.
opponent is also drawing all of those cards.
Dann weiß ich
Not
wenigstens, was
really
mein Gegner
gaining much
kennt.
of an advantage. You're still staying in the game and that you have enough cards to ink and play per turn. But there's definitely a lot of answers that Ruby Amethyst needs in this matchup, whereas Emerald Steel has some pretty safe answers for what Ruby Amethyst tries to do anyway. If we see Jeremy open with like a Chernobog and a Flynn, it unfortunately looks like he doesn't have the 1-drop. You have all the steel removal that you can use to banish the Flynn if you want to, or you have characters that can contest him in strength for the first turn or two. But Robert does have the Diablo and the Bucky we see on turns 1 and 2. Fortunately for Jeremy, Robert does not have the Shift Diablo to follow that up, so it's just going to be this Bucky on turn 2.
So what's interesting is I think that Jeremy actually did have a Chernobog's Followers in his hand.
Ja, warum hat er den eigentlich ausgespielt?
Maybe I missed it. I know I saw Be Prepared in there, a Brawl. But would there be a reason why he wouldn't play that on turn 1?
I think there is. And the reason for this is because Robert is on the play. Robert went first this turn.
See, there it is.
Which means that
he's inking it.
Robert can play a small Diablo on turn 1. Jeremy saw this. And so Jeremy says, okay, if I play a Chernobog's Followers, and then Robert can shift Diablo next turn, then Robert can also sing a removal song on my Chernobog's Followers, keeping me from drawing a card. So rather than playing a card and then it going to the discard pile, you want to keep as many cards in your hand as possible so that you can make it to that 6 or 7 ink. So instead of playing the Chernobog's Followers, Jeremy says this is actually better used as a card that goes into my inkwell.
Interesting.
In case Robert does have that line of being able to sing a removal action.
Interessant, ich hätte den Chernobog's Follower Turn 1 Pro ausgelegt.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That, it's like we've talked about before.
Als ob ich Angst gehabt hätte, dass mein Gegner Turn 2 Diablo macht und dann damit irgendwas singt, meinen Guide zu
And especially with Chernobog's Followers, that's a card that you want to make sure sticks on the board because you can choose to banish it to draw a card. And so it's not just about having a body on the board, it's that card draw element too.
Yeah, it would be totally different if Jeremy was going first because then he can quest and banish the Chernobog before Robert has the ability to banish it himself. So that's the kind of differences and things you have to think about when playing Disney Lorcana at a highly competitive state like this, knowing when you're on the play, on the draw, how to play around those. But we do see Robert play an Ursula, Deceiver of All. Very powerful card, being able to sing songs twice.
Muss man eigentlich nicht so unbedingt brawlen jetzt, weil die Songs, die singt, ja nichts machen, wenn Jeremy kein Board hat.
Any sudden chills that Robert might be playing to
doch, Sudden Chill, stimmt.
Wobei,
wenn Jeremy jetzt irgendwie dann Sisu rauslegt, dann kann er natürlich potenziell doppelt Let the Stormrage fressen. Das wären halt nicht so toll.
So many.
Ich denke schon, dass jetzt wahrscheinlich Brawl auf Ursula das Beste ist.
Yes.
Yes. But did you know that she only has 6 tentacles?
No, I did not.
Even in the movie and in the art on Lorcana cards as well, she has 6 tentacles.
Oh wow, sie ist ja 6 counted.
If you count her arms, though, she has 8 limbs.
Okay.
So there you
go.
I
guess that makes sense. There's still 8. Still yes. Up to 8.
Ach so, 6 Beine und 2 Arme. Interessant.
On the Ursa Deceiver of all. Recognizing how powerful it could be for
was für Lore-Arguments
to sing any songs with her.
Lore-Arguments.
It's not a Diablo, but it's still strong enough to warrant removal.
Habe ich nicht gesagt.
Yes. Now, some decks I know are made where you don't put a lot on the board in the first.
Wow, schon wieder dieser Turn 4 Robin Hood.
I don't think Ruby Amethyst is typically that kind of deck, but that's kind of what we're seeing happen.
Das ist irgendwie eigenartig, ne?
Typically, it depends on the
Man schmeißt den einen Robin Hood so weg für einen Tinte mehr diese Runde.
You mentioned resources earlier and how important it is in a card game, and specifically in this matchup.
Bevor man nichts macht, okay.
Emerald Steel is attacking your resources.
Aber ist schon nicht das, was man unbedingt machen will. Viel lieber hätte er bestimmt so Jafar gelegt oder so.
You're also, maybe even without realizing it, attacking your opponent's ink, because the less cards you have in hand, the less cards you can ink. And you're attacking the cards that your opponent has to play. So Jeremy, knowing that Emerald Steel typically doesn't have a lot of high questing characters earlier in the game.
Die Tinte wird einfach schon mal wieder bereit. Also echt unfassbar, wie die Leute es nicht schaffen, vernünftig zu spielen.
Robert can gain in these first 2 or 3 turns, knowing that I'm going to keep extra cards
Alle
in my
vorher
hand
kein
and
Magic
guarantee
gespielt.
that I have cards to ink every turn, and that I can at least get up to 7 ink, so that
kein Force of Will.
Hopefully I can find to be prepared and answer this board before Robert gets too far ahead.
Yes. Well, squeakum. We have 2 Buckies on the board here.
2 Buckies on the board. Robert also did something really interesting the last turn, in that he played a 1-drop Robin Hood and then shifted the Robin Hood on top of it, because Robert's only playing with 4 ink right now. Hasn't inked up to 5, so just to get the 1 Bucky discard trigger off. So now we have
Jeremy hat schon noch viele Handkarten. Die Frage ist allerdings, ob Turn 6 die Ursula kommen wird, seinen Be Prepared wegzunehmen. Weil wenn nicht, dann ist
Jeremy is trying his hardest to keep these cards in his hand, and this is why it's important for him to not play characters early in the game, because if he played a card every turn after this, he'd be
weil Robert hat noch keinen Diablo.
Less in his hand than he has currently.
Yeah, and like you've said before, in the Ruby Amethyst deck, a lot of the tools and answers that you're going to have are at the 5, 6, and 7 ink, and so making sure that
was hat denn da? Diablo 1-Drop und?
Put into his inkwell are just going to be really important. What do you think that?
Weil irgendwie Jeremy hat so viel gezogen. Robert, obwohl Doppelbucky hat er erst einen Flatborn gemacht, ne?
A little bit more comfortable.
Definitely more comfortable, specifically because of the.
Das andere ist Let the Storm Rage
I'm not sure how many uninkables are in his hand.
Das ist
echt
schlecht.
So I don't know how difficult his inking situation
er kann jetzt noch so.
But even just being at 6 ink and having multiple cards in your hand like this,
Lore machen.
you know you can pretty safely make it 7.
Und Diablo in die Tinte legen. 3 Lore machen so.
Really
könnte auch 5 machen, aber die Buckys würde ich noch zurücklassen. Den Diablo würde ich jetzt nie ausspielen.
A lot of times is to play those expensive Ruby
ich glaube, den hätte ich geinkt.
Medusa, even Maui, or be prepared as well. So as soon as
jetzt siehst du, was dir blüht,
can secure enough ink to play
das sieht aus, als ob Jeremy locker gewinnen würde.
Off the top, it's okay, because you already have the ink to play it. And those are cards that really help you come back in these scenarios, because we see Robert has built a really wide board. 2 Diablos, 2 Buckies, a Robin Hood as well. And so he's not questing for a ton. The Robin Hood is questing for 2, but because he has so many characters on board, they all add up together, questing for 5 or 6 lore turn at this point. So it's critical that he has something like I keep mentioning, be prepared, because that's really the answer here, so that you can basically start over, wipe Robert's board completely, and start slowly gaining advantage over time and coming back.
Yeah. We did see that Madame Medusa in his hand, and I was wondering if that's what we're going to see is Madame Medusa coming down, choosing to banish that Robin Hood, because that's really was that biggest quester on the board there.
Den hätte ich jetzt auch gemacht, weil ich Angst hätte, dass der Gegner Ursula zurückhält, um meinen Be Prepared zu discarden. Aber jetzt natürlich, jetzt kommt wahrscheinlich Let the Storm Rage on. Auf die Snake, um die dann mit dem Diablo abzutauschen. Die andere Karte ist Strength of Raging Fire, glaube ich. Ne, Sudden Chill.
And something else to think about, Robert has a wide board, but 2 of those cards are Bucky. Robert doesn't really want to exert these Buckies if he doesn't have to. He wants to only exert them when he knows he'll be safe, which is basically never at this point.
Oh yeah, and he's seen Jeremy's hand because of the Diablo
kann man gleich mal noch auslegen. Dann kommt finally der Be Prepared.
But he's choosing not to quest with Bucky. Do you think that there's a reason, like, why would he not choose to quest now if he knows that Be Prepared is going to take them out?
Vielleicht doch.
That's a good question, to be honest with you. If he knows that Be Prepared is coming along.
Ja, doch, er hat so viel kann, wenn er jetzt einfach Be Prepared macht, um die beiden Buckies wegzumachen, dürfte er eigentlich gewonnen haben. Deswegen ist echt eine interessante, ja, das Force Be Prepared halt wirklich.
Cards like the Peter Pan Shadowfinder, the Maui, these cards that have Rush, and Robert only had the 2 Buckies and the Diablos in play.
Ja, aber jetzt hat Jeremy doch immer noch 5 Fangkarten oder so. Ich denke nicht, dass Robert das noch gewinnt.
All he needs is another Maui or a
Wobei Robert hat mehr Lore.
Which he did draw off the
Vielleicht
top,
kann er irgendwie so Beater machen, aber ich glaube
to
nicht.
Banish the exerted characters, and now you don't have to play the Be Prepared. You can get rid of them anyway and save it. So it sort of forces Jeremy to play this Be Prepared, and that's one less Be Prepared that he'll have later.
Yeah, I have to be honest. This is one of my favorite things to do as a player myself, is to play Be Prepared. Your opponent puts down another character, and then you come right back and say, well, Lady Tremaine.
Sorry. Should have played another character.
Lady Tremaine is great, and I'm glad to see that some players are still including her in decks, because she's a lot of fun. I know we've talked before in some other matches, Madame Medusa, is really strong, but Lady Tremaine, I think, still has a nice place in the deck.
Absolutely. These ladies in chairs, as the community likes to call them, are very strong for different reasons. Lady Tremaine forces your opponent to pick a character to banish when she's played, and so of course when there's only one character in play, that's the only character they can banish. And she was an extremely strong card in set 2, sort of tapered off when Madame Medusa got introduced in set 3, and has seen more of a comeback because people have stopped playing around her. I remember in Rise of the Floodborn, every deck was playing small one-drop characters. So you had something to play next to that threat in case your opponent had a Lady Tremaine, and people just aren't doing that anymore. So you can get away with plays like that, where they just play a Tragic Beast and then the Lady Tremaine comes down.
Yeah. But there's really been, since Jeremy was able to play that Be Prepared, a dramatic shift here in the board state. How do you think, what do you think Robert's going through Robert's mind here in the current game state?
Er dürfte locker gewinnen. Robert hat zwar 10 Lore.
Threatening cards like Diablo. We see him playing the Diablos, hoping that you can get the Diablos exerted, playing the Robin Hood, Champion Druid, so that you can start to
Jeremy
challenge your opponent's characters and continue to gain a little lore. Fortunately, Jeremy is doing what Ruby is best at doing and just keeps banishing these cards.
No?
That's why it was so important for Emerald's Field to gain as much lore as possible at the beginning of the game, because as the game goes later and later, Ruby Amethyst just has more options to banish your characters before
Und genau, nächste Runde hat Jeremy endgültig alles mehr. Mehr Ink, mehr Charakter, mehr Handkarten und mehr Lore. Dann hat er das Spiel unter Kontrolle und Robert kann nichts mehr machen, in keine Richtung. Das heißt, jetzt kann man noch so mit Robin Hood erkunden für 2.
Unless Robert can stick a Diablo or something that can draw him cards as well, he's going to be working with very limited resources.
And there was another Be Prepared in Jeremy's hand,
wahrscheinlich schon
but
Donald
Robert was
und noch
able
an Donald
to
legen.
force the discard there with the Ursula.
Sieht ja jetzt, dass Jeremy nichts machen kann.
It's definitely a start, because you don't want Jeremy to
Mit
have
Robin
access
Hood
to another Be
noch 2
Prepared.
Lore machen.
Because you do start to come back and are able to build another wide board, so that's great. Jeremy's hand is still looking very great, though, having 2 Merlin Rabbits in hand, also having a Flynn, Sisu, and a Maui. Sisu's a little bit less threatening, because Robert's not
wegen des Maui hat Angst,
having 6 strength is
aber ich hätte es, glaube ich, trotzdem gemacht.
to make sure that the Flynn gets a trigger every
Dann
turn,
hätte man wenigstens
and
2
Robert
Lore
is not
gemacht.
having very many cards in his hand.
Noch eine
Robert's out.
gezogen.
He's empty-handed.
No cards in his hand.
Weil
means
außer
that,
das
it's
Race zu
more
gewinnen, kannst du
likely
nichts
for
mehr machen,
minors to
Robert.
be able to trigger, gaining
Ich hätte da
4 at the start of
reingeschoben
Jeremy's
mit
turn.
dem...
We do see
Ist
a fun
natürlich auch
card
schwer,
that we
so
haven't
10
seen in a
Lore zu
while,
machen.
though. Donald Duck coming down.
He just celebrated a birthday.
He did just celebrate a
90th
birthday. He's an old duck.
He is.
But
He's a classic.
He has a very fun ability. It's a group hug ability. Everybody gets to draw cards at the start of Robert's turn.
Robert ist am
Jeremy
Ende.
can decide if he wants to draw another card, and Robert gets to draw an extra card off of Donald Duck as well. It's sort of like a pseudo Tragic Beast. I see people playing him for that reason.
Oh, yeah.
He also has 2 lore and a lot of willpower, so he can be difficult to banish through challenging.
Ja, finde ich eigentlich stark in diesem Deck, Donald Duck.
And
Ist eine coole
Combo
Kombo mit Discard.
Cards off of him,
Weil die Handelsskiller ist irgendwann leer, aber damit Donald Duck wird sie wieder voll im eigenen Zug und die Discarder machen wieder was.
The Donald Duck if you can, because Robert's already at 14 lore. But
weil normal, wenn ich ziehe Sudden Chill, dann macht es nichts. Und wenn ich Sudden Chill und X ziehe, der Gegner zieht X, dann total geil. Mein Sudden Chill discardet seinen X und dann zocke ich meinen X.